You are now tuning into the Resilient Podcast. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of the Resilient Podcast. I am your host, Rob Aurelius, and it is officially November. Wow, 1 month left, and that's it. 2025 is gone. And, today is the first Monday of the month. This month will officially make the 1 year anniversary of the Resilient Tribune launch. And originally, on that same day, November 20th, we were supposed to come out with the documentary, but the documentary is not coming out now till December, like I mentioned in my previous episode, in episode 40. That's because post-production is not easy, and Oscar, Diego, and I got a late start, and there was just a lot of stuff in between. A lot of personal stuff that was going on. Oscar was going through some transitionings. He started a new chapter in his career. Diego was really, really busy dealing with a lot of stuff. And of course, I was also very busy as well too. And at one point I thought that I was going to be parting ways with a brand that I had been working with for a very long time. Because things were just not, things were very, how can I put this? At one point, I felt like things had ran its course, and I was like, look, don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. Because this is a brand that I worked with for over a decade, and I was super excited about everything. Like celebrating over a decade with them, and things just kind of went, like I said, they were not good for a while. Things were just down. And, like Oscar had said to me, in the middle of the year, he had said to me, Rob, I'm just trying to focus on like my inner peace and my mental health. And I always tell people the same thing. I was like, listen, why not? Right. We're supposed to focus on our inner peace and our mental health. We're supposed to work towards that. So this month, just, for so many reasons, it's a month where I'm like, listen, man. And, folks, first and foremost, I want to apologize to everyone who had reached out to me, in the middle of October and said, hey, you only have one episode of the Resilient Podcast out. When is episode 41 coming out? And, unfortunately, I only gave you guys one episode last month, but this month I promised to give you 3 episodes. So this is the first one of the month. The second one will be coming out next week, and I will have a special guest on the show. Just wanted to put that out there. And the final episode will be towards the end of the month. And we're going to talk about everything. We're going to talk about getting closer to the documentary release date. We're going to talk about how the 1 year anniversary of the Resilient Tribune went. So it's very fitting that the name of this episode is The Calm Before the Story. And in this episode, we're going to be finding peace in the unfinished chapters. So, I spent some time talking to James, talking to a lot of people as of late about everything, when August of 20, here's the thing. when earlier this year, March came around the corner, all I kept thinking to myself was like, man, I can't believe that it's about to make a year since my ex-girlfriend and I broke up. I can't believe that it's about to make a year since I'm single. And, when April came around, I had these blues because, of course, I had thought about how a year ago around that time, I was contemplating my life. And also had started I had officially started the Resilient Podcast in April. The first episode aired in April with my former partner, Josh. And, when May came around and I was turning 39 years old, I originally had plans to go away for my birthday because I said to myself, listen, you're not going to, 2024, you spent your birthday out in, Hartford, Connecticut, reflecting on everything that happens because originally you were supposed to be on a cruise heading out to the Caribbean, but you didn't get that. So you're going to give yourself what you can. And, when 2025, my birthday came around, 39, a lot of people are saying, what are you doing for your birthday? 39 birthday, it's your last birthday. It's your last in your 30s. Next year you're going to be 40 years old. And, it's important that you do something for this birthday. And I remember literally thinking like, yeah, I should do something. And then when my birthday came around, I just stayed local. I stayed here in New York. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything fancy. Besides a nice photo shoot that Diego and I had put together to talk about resilience, to promote, what resilience means to me. And then, for a little bit, I said to myself, I'm going to be okay. But when August came back around this year, and, I found myself 1 year later in August out in Philadelphia again, this time around, things were a little bit different. I was out there to pretty much close the chapter. And, initially, the documentary itself, we were supposed to end it in May of 2025. And we ended up just pushing it to August because I had said to Diego, I'm not done yet. This story is not done yet. And Diego's like, well, if we want this documentary to come out on time, which was originally November, we should end it now because post-production is going to take months. And I said to him, yeah, you're right. You got a point, but I'm not finished telling my story. And I still feel that we have more to say. And I still feel that there's more that I need to give to this documentary. So we officially ended everything in August. And, fast forward, when I was out there, I tried to close as many chapters as possible. I tried to finish my story as much as I could, so that I didn't feel a certain way and so that I didn't feel that there was still much to say. And of course, it's like when it comes to healing, folks, we're not, no one's ever 100% fully healed. We heal from things. We overcome it, we find resilience, and, we eventually move on if we are allowed to, we move on from things, but we never fully 100% heal from things. And I want to make that crystal clear to people. No one's ever 100% fully healed. And, this time now, November, I remember last year, I literally said to myself, man, this is going to be a hard month. I felt like it was April of 2024 all over again. And I said to myself, how am I going to survive? How am I going to overcome this? And I remember talking to Diego and saying to Diego, I don't think I'm going to be able to shoot anything for the documentary this month. And Diego's like, listen, if you don't want to shoot anything in November, we could revisit in December. And I was like, no, we got to shoot. And what we ended up doing was I ended up reliving her birthday, her 30th birthday, where we celebrated it, which was in Queens, New York. And the next day, I was supposed to, if things had went the way they should have, you know, we would have flown into Vegas November 18th, and November 19th was going to be her birthday, right? Her 31st birthday. And the plan was to have family there with her. Something brief, maybe my mom, of course. I wanted her to be there. Her mom and her sister and her sister's spouse, because I wanted to make this a private engagement party. And my mom had never been to Vegas. I don't know if her mom had ever been to Vegas. She had not been to Vegas, and that's the reason why I wanted to do it there. And if things would have went the way they should have, I'm not going to say my way. If things would have went my way, if things would have went the way they should have, I was going to propose to her November 20th. And instead, what I ended up doing on that day was launching the Resilient Tribune. So a year later, right, as November 20th approaches, of course I'm gonna think it's gonna be on my mind, like, could have been engaged for a year now, but you're not. You haven't heard from her in over a year. And I was talking to someone, and they asked me, "Hey, Rob, how are you feeling as we enter November now?" And I was talking to my therapist about this a few days ago as well too, and I was like, honestly, as surprising as this may sound, I feel a little bit peaceful, but also reflective, because November always brings us, for the rest of my life, I feel that it's always going to bring a certain stillness. Like a reminder that the year's almost over. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, where I said, hey, one more month and that's it, the year's over. And that everything we've gone through has led us here. So to me, it's a strange mix of gratitude and quiet anticipation. And my friend was like, yeah, this is cool. Like, the year has flown by, right? And I'm like, yeah, the year's flown by. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. So, when I was getting ready to do episode 41, I had written down like an overview of what I wanted to talk about. And, I didn't originally have the name of the episode, The Calm Before the Story, as that. I ended up changing it eventually because, as time goes by and things change and things are different, sometimes you're like, okay, and a lot of things were happening. Unfortunately, this hurricane came and started messing with the Caribbean. And, first it was Jamaica and then it hit other parts of the Caribbean. And, I spent a lot of that time thinking about it. And I spent a lot of that time reaching out to people, making sure people were okay, because I know a lot of people that are from the Caribbean. So, I eventually changed the name of episode 41, the theme of episode 41. And my friend goes to me, so what are you going to call the name of this episode? And I was like, I already came up with the overview and I wrote it down the other day. And I went, because folks, believe it or not, I really actually sit there and I write out this whole entire overview of the episode, because I got to know what I'm talking about. I mean, I could be free range, but at the same time, I want to stick to a theme, and I want to stick to message, to the messenger. And that's why I write these things down. So when I said to my friend, The Calm Before the Story, they said, the calm before the story? You sure you don't mean the calm before the storm? And I was like, something like that. It's that's what it's supposed to be. But they ended up asking me, like, why did you name the episode? Why are you going to call this episode 41, the calm before the story? And I said to my friend, well, it's because sometimes the quiet moments, the ones between the chaos and the breakthrough, are where we find out who we really are. And my friend was like, ooh, okay. And I was like, look, I've learned that not every season of life needs to be loud or full of movement, because some seasons are about silence, stillness, and trusting what's next. And my friend was like, whoa, spoken like a true philosopher. And I was like, it's just the truth, Think about it. Not all seasons are meant to, the movement and noise. Not really. So my friend goes, okay, so, you talk about silence. So what does silence look like for you right now? So I said to my friend, with everything that's been going on this year, believe it or not, it looks like peace, but also patience. And, I'm learning to be okay with not knowing all the answers, because if one thing is certain, this year has taught me that healing doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's just, it just happens quietly when you least expect it. And my friend was like, oh, okay. He was like, I kind of felt like that too about certain things. And I was like, yeah, So my friend asked me a question that really hit me in the feels. And I barely was able to answer that question, because it was about resilience. And he asked me, so Rob, I have this very serious question to ask you. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. He asked me, has the past year changed your relationship with resilience? And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, yeah, it has changed it completely. I used to think resilience was about pushing through pain or proving strength to the world. But now I realize that it's also about slowing down. It's about knowing when to breathe, when to pause, and when to let things unfold naturally. Because I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back. Resilience is about holding yourself together while you wait for your story to continue. And my friend was like, yo, man, crazy. And I was like, yep. And I was like, that's just how I feel. It hasn't always been about bouncing back. I want people to understand that. You just got to hold yourself together. It's not easy. I've been trying to hold myself together all year round. And again, I've had my waves of emotions. I've had my, so much has happened during the healing process. So much has happened. I've taken so much time to think about everything that's going on, every single thing that's been happening in my life, like everything. Spending time with my niece, work matters, dealing with personal matters, dealing with just everything in general, and just thinking about it. Like, there's been people this year that I stopped talking to, that I stopped communicating with, people that I'm not going to say I ghosted them, but just people that I just, I kept my distance, and I said, like, I can't have these people in my life anymore. People that I thought that were meant to be in my life, and people that also during the journey last year, when the whole resilience journey started, some of these people are not there anymore. And I'm like, wow. The other day, I was going through my social media, and I was unfollowing on Instagram an amount of people, because I was testing out this app to see how accurate it is. Instagram is not a fan of third-party apps, right? They flag your account. And I literally was going through, just trying to unfollow as many inactive accounts as I can, because there's a lot of people that I follow that haven't probably posted a picture on their Instagram in like 2 years, 3 years. So I assume that either they don't use that account anymore, they're locked out of it, or they just don't use the app anymore. And to my surprise, there was someone a few years back who gave me a beautiful book. I had shared with her. This is someone that I met when I used to work at Nostrum for a brand called Amouage. And this person, she was working for a brand at the time called Parfums de Marly. And no, it's not Estefania, because that's how I met Estefania. Estefania was actually working for that brand. She was actually the person that came after Estefania, because Estefania had moved on to another brand in another location. And then this girl took over, and we became really cool, and we had so much in common. Our grandmothers both died in December, and our grandmothers were both born in April. And I was like, man, we're like twins. And we had a lot of similarity. And then the one thing that we talked about the most was our relationships with our mothers. And, she ended up giving me this book, The Four Agreements. And it was so special. And believe it or not, as the years went by, she had her own small business, and I always wanted to support it. Never got the chance to, because she never got the chance to deliver the goods to me. And then just one day, we were not following each other on social media anymore. So yeah, things just change. Not everything is meant to last forever. I reached out to her, and I could have left it alone. And I said, things change. Life goes on, but I don't know if I'm ever going to speak to you ever again. But I want to thank you for the time that you came into my life, because, people come into your life for a season, reason, a lifetime. And I want to thank you for gifting me with that book. I promise that I will hold that memory, that fond memory of us, forever in my heart. And I didn't look back. I didn't see if she wrote back to me. I didn't see anything. And, I just moved on. And that's just to show you that not everyone is supposed to follow you in your journey. Someone you met last year may not be in your journey a year later. And that was proven to me last year when my ex and I broke up. That happened this year when this person who came into my life to give me so much advice about healing and so much advice about resilience, this person decided to just walk away because of a misunderstanding because they thought that I had said something about them on social media and didn't even care enough to listen to me explain to them, like, this is not about you. You know, I would never do that. You came into my life and you gave me advice. See, here's the thing about folks is that a lot of people in life take people for granted. A lot of people in life don't know how to value people, but I try to value everyone that comes across me as much as I can, especially if I care about you, especially if you mean something to me. Some people don't care. Some people will be your friend for 5 years and then all of a sudden decide they don't want to talk to you anymore. If I decide to do that, I will have a reasoning why, at least for myself, why I no longer talk to this person, why I no longer associate with this person, why I no longer care about this person. So, there's so much more to talk about, but, we're going to take a quick break in a few minutes. And before we do that, I just wanted to take this time to give a shout out to one of our sponsors on this podcast, which is Nala Health. And, Victor Melgar is doing a great job. Victor just opened up this beautiful lounge out there in one of his locations out in California. Folks, for more information on that, follow, Victor's social media, Nala Health on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and check out their website, nalahealth.com. When you're on that website, make sure that you visit that website for all your holistic needs. And this code that's right here, right across right here, it is a coupon code for whenever you make a purchase on that website, nalahealth.com. Anything you get a discount because you are listening to this podcast right now. So type in that code that you see right here, right in the middle, and go save some money. And Victor's got an assessment application on there, and just fill it out. It just helps him and his team assess you better, assess your situation better, But when we come back from the small commercial break, I will continue to talk to you guys more about what me and my friend talked about that night. So I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay, welcome back to the Resilient Podcast, episode 41 with Rob Aurelius. We are talking about the calm before the story. And before I left for that brief commercial break, we were talking about, everything that's been going on this year, the people that you believe are going to be part of your journey forever. And unfortunately, they some do, some don't. And one of the things that comes to my mind is, Thanksgiving is this month. And, I know a lot of people celebrate Thanksgiving and a lot of people say things like, oh, you should be celebrating Thanksgiving every single day. But, for what we do and when it comes to Thanksgiving is we start being thankful for what we have. We start being thankful for whatever it is that we want to be thankful for, right? And, this year I have a lot to be thankful for. There's people in my life now that I never thought in a million years that they would be in my life. There's somebody in my life right now who I briefly seen a year and a half ago in passing, never thought that they were going to be a part of my life. And now they are, and they're special to me. And this is someone who listens to me and gives me advice. And these connections always matter. And I'm so thankful for them. I'm always thankful for those people that are there for me. And, this person in particular has been just so supportive. And, eventually someday I will be able to tell you guys who that person is. Um, because I want to talk more about this person at some point, but I'm thankful for them. Great person, great parent to their children, great spouse to their significant other. Just a good person overall. And I'm thankful for having someone like that in my life. Someone that also has similarities with me. Um, but my friend was talking to me, and I remember this night. I was out with my friend Megaran. He had been visiting, and he had done a show in Brooklyn, and I couldn't see him that night. I had Diego go do some media coverage for his event, but the next day I hung out with him, and we were talking a lot on the table about we were talking a lot at this restaurant that we went to, and we were talking about a lot of things. And that night, I received a text message from my friend, and my friend had said to me, um, these stories about closure, the stories about where people never get closure. How do you think people find peace in those stories when they never find closure? And I'm like, whew, you're asking the right person, because I don't think I ever got closure with this situation with my ex. And I was like, but that's a tough one, because when you don't get closure like that, or you're still trying to find peace, right? Like, I'm still trying to find peace because this is freshly happening to me, right? Like, it's only been almost about a year and a half. Well, it is a year and a half now that Max and I broke up. And some people will say that that's a long time. It's not. Because to me, a long time would be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. But, a year and a half from now, from something that, recently happened, um, you still think about it. And I feel like and it's like I've mentioned before, how we never fully heal from something. We always think about things. So to me, I think peace comes when you stop trying to rewrite what's already happened, and you start accepting that some stories were never meant to be finished the way we imagined. And, some chapters in our life are meant to teach, not to last. Okay. And sometimes that's where real growth begins, in my opinion. And everyone was like, that's fair. That's beautiful. So remember when I spoke to you guys about the journal, the memory journal that my ex-girlfriend gave me back in Christmas 2023, the only Christmas we ever had together? In that memory journal, it asks me for the next 5 years, starting 2023. Actually, I started using that journal in 2024, but that memory journal asks you the same question for the next 5 years. And one of the questions that asks, and it recently asked me the other day, what's been your biggest lesson lately? And I remember writing in that journal, the response I had last year was complete, because sometimes when I look at the journal, I say to myself, okay, this year, 2024, I answered this way, but the answer is still the same in 2025. I remember one of the questions was literally like, what's your favorite, snack? What's your favorite, you know, junk food or treat? And I said, M&M peanuts. And then I remember writing this year, like, the answer is still M&M peanuts. So this year, the answer for that question, what's been your biggest lesson lately? It changed, because what I ended up writing, and I have it right here in this book, I wrote that peace is powerful, and that not everything broken needs to be fixed. Because some things just need to be understood. And I've learned to find beauty in what's unfinished, to love what's imperfect, and to keep my heart open when it hurts. So that's what I wrote. And, folks, we're getting close to ending this episode. And as always, I thank you all that tune in. But I'm excited for episode 42, and I'll tell you why. Because I have a special guest coming up. This is someone that I reached out to months ago. And I told this person, after hearing their story on social media and reading like the cause, which has a lot to do with something going on this month, by the way, when I read their story and when I listened to the things that they were writing, I said, man, what a resilient person. And I had to reach out to this person and I asked this person, please, I need you on my podcast. And we finally made it happen. We finally agreed. And the next episode hasn't been filmed yet, but the next episode will be with this special guest. And, again, this is someone whose story, ties beautifully. They literally tie beautifully into the theme of what I would say resilience, right? And emotional recovery. So I'm excited for this conversation. With that being said, the Resilience Project documentary is just around the corner, folks. December 2025. It's here. So the Resilience Project is something deeply personal and transformative that I can't wait. I just can't wait to share it with all of you. I just can't. And, folks, this episode right here, I'm glad that I was finally able to do it because it was an episode I was supposed to give you guys back in October and I wasn't able to. And I know that you folks understand, I know that you folks don't pressure me, but, I do want to say that for the Resilience Tribune this month, I did have someone that was interested in writing a story. And I had to tell him, like, look, it will be the 1 year anniversary that I'm launching the Resilience Tribune. It's only fitting that I am the person that shares the story this month. So, if you don't, if you want to, share your story on December or even January, right, the beginning of the year, of the new year, and the person was like, okay, no problem, I get it. The story that I want to deliver to you guys this month, it's I've been writing it, and it's gonna come out soon. I'll have it ready before the end of the month. But folks, last month, October, Carl, who's worked for me with ARCG Media for the last, 13 years, Carl wrote such a beautiful story. He talked about resilience. He talked about everything he's been through. And, Carl is definitely one of the most resilient people that I've ever met in my life. Shout out to Carl. Thank you for writing your story in the Resilience Tribune. And what I want everyone to take away from this episode right here is that, I know that this is like the time already, right, where seasonal depression starts to kick in. Seasonal depression has already kicked in for me. It started a little bit in October, but definitely November because, I've had some bad memories in November during Thanksgiving. I get very emotional because my mom's birthday is in November. And whenever my mom's birthday comes around, I just get emotional. And people have always asked me, like, why do you get emotional when your mom's birthday comes around? I was like, because my mom's getting a year older. And, I keep seeing my mom just, getting older in front of me. My mom's going to be 67 this month. And, I love my mother so much. I really do. my mom is one of the most resilient people that I know. Um, my mom has been through so much in this life. My mom has put me through so much. But at the end of the day, she's my mother. And I really, really love her. And, you know, as time goes by, I realize that she did her very best to raise 4 kids. And you know, I will forever, 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 forever be thankful for that. Um, Speaking about my mom, uh, which brings me now to my next, you know, subject. I recently shared, you know, my mom was visiting, so I recently shared Maddie Rock's coffee with her, and my mom was like, "Oh, does it taste like Bustelo?" And I was like, "Well, it's not Bustelo, mom, but it's good stuff. It's good quality stuff." And you know, we had it together, and she liked it. She really did. And you know, for that, you know, it's fitting to also give a shout out to Matty Rock for his coffee. Our next sponsor, right, which is Matty Rock's Coffee. The link to order it is right here in the middle. And folks, same situation. When you go on that website and you buy that beautiful, delicious coffee, you get a discount using the code TRP10. So TRP10, obviously for Nala Health, and TRP10 also for Matty Rock's Coffee. To me, the best coffee made in America. And for those that are out there that are coffee lovers, this coffee's for you. And I hope that you enjoy it. Thank me later. But folks, you know, as we come to, you know, the end of this episode, today I was looking at the You Got This inspiring quotes cards that James gave me last year for Christmas. And I came across a great card. I've heard this before. I've been told this before. And today's card says, "We rise by lifting others." And that's exactly how I feel. We rise by lifting others. We're not here to put people down. We're here to elevate others. We're here to elevate ourselves, to evolve. So remember that. Always remember that. So, folks, as we wrap up this episode, I want to say that as we begin November, remember, resilience isn't just about surviving what happened. It's about learning to rest in what's still becoming. I want you to find your calm. I want you to trust your process. And please listen to me when I say this. Believe that your story is still being written. One peaceful page at a time. I want to thank you all for tuning into this episode. I look forward to episode 42. Thank you for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. But remember to always remain resilient. And I'll see you all soon. I love you all. Happy November. Peace.